Hello everyone, today we are going to discuss about legal system of Nepal. Legal system refers to the process of interpreting and enforcing the law. Nepal's legal system have written constitution, written statutes, laws, acts and regulations like Roman legal system. Nepal has three sources of law. They are legislation, precedent and customs. Firstly, let's talk about legislation. Legislation is derived from two Latin words, that is legis and latum. Legis means law and latum means to make or to set. Therefore, legislation simply means making or setting of law. There are two types of legislation. One is supreme legislation. The legislation made by the supreme authority or parliament itself is known as supreme legislation. Similarly, another is subordinate legislation. It is also known as delegated legislation. It is the law made by any body other than sovereign authority. There are 5 types of legislation. One of them is colonial legislation. Legislation or law made for the colony state by the parent state is also known as colonial legislation. Similarly, another one is executive legislation. When the law-making power is delegated to executive, it is also known as executive legislative. Similarly, judicial legislation. Sometimes judicial body make rules for the regulation of its procedures. Such legislation is called judicial legislation. Municipal legislation. Here, power is delegated to local level to make laws for their local matters. Lastly, autonomous legislation. When the power is delegated to autonomous body to make autonomic law is called autonomous legislation. Now let's talk about precedent. Precedent is the earlier happening decisions which is taken as the example for the upcoming cases. The judgment passed by the judge are recovered and are later used as the law of similar cases. The decision made by Supreme Court is binding for all the courts under it. The decision made by other courts are not binding for the Supreme Court, but Supreme Court will take it into consideration while making decision. Lastly, let's talk about customs. Customs are the widely accepted way of doing something. It is the oldest source of law. Customs are the code of conduct which is followed for the long period of time in the society and are used as law later. Customs are of two types. They are customs having sensation and customs without sensation.